What's up, guys? How's it going? Looks like we are live. Welcome to another episode of Full Blast. I'm your host, Raja, and today we're talking about SF. My hair has been like just a lot of energy lately. Boy, oh boy, I cannot wait to actually get to cut my goddamn hair. But I bring up the hair not only because I just want to rant about my hair for a second. I bring up my hair because it ties into this whole SF thing that we're talking about in today's video. So in yesterday's video, we talked about how to NT when you don't want to. And what we sort of discovered, by we, I mean I, as I did a TE talk out blaster video off the top of my head, what I sort of came to understand is that NT is all about risk versus reward. That is what NT is doing all day long when it's in its purest form. It's thinking like chess. It's any sort of strategy, any sort of anything where it's like, taking this approach will have this percentage successful outcome. This approach has this percentage. Okay, well, if we tweak this, then how can we increase these percentages here? Like, that's all that NT is doing. Now, it does that in a variety of different ways. It may, like my NITE blast is going to be predominantly concerned with the plan, with the structure, with the end goal, and it's going to my calculations of risk versus reward are going to be very tribe oriented, right? So I'm going to be thinking about what is riskiest for the tribe. Who is really affected by this? What is the reward, for the tribe's people, regardless of what FI want, right? Whereas a TI flavor of this risk versus reward, that's all going to be very internal. It's going to be much more, it's where I think you sort of get the TI stereotype of like being really calculating, whether it's, the INTP version or the sleep side of the ISTP, right? It's this very internal logic block building, but again, it's fundamentally about risk versus reward. It's carefully considering all possible angles of a thing to maximize the result. Okay. The other side of that coin is SF. So in the SF video, I talked about how you can sort of start with just doing good idea, bad idea, right? Like the real simple, fundamental, basic, like, will this get me killed or not, right? Is this going to have catastrophic results or not, right? And then slowly, as you get better at it, you can start to build in more of a gradient and be like, this idea is fine, but if I wait, it's going to be better. Or, boy, this idea isn't great. And this is a side of NT that I don't think gets enough credit, because NT, again, I think has this aura of like being very detached and very like taking the long view and abstract, whatever. But a big part of good NT and healthy NT is being able to go, man, we have a 50%, like we have right now, it's a coin toss. If we do this, if we pull the trigger on this, it's a 50-50 chance of success versus failure. But if we wait, that number drops to 40, then 30, and it just gets harder and harder to dig yourself out of this hole. As much as I don't like acting right now, this really is the best chance that we have, or that I have, or whatever, right? So NT is also doing that. But again, it comes down to risk versus reward. And I think that that's where this anecdote about like lizard brain versus prefrontal cortex brain actually has some legs, and and when I say has legs, what I mean is actually trackable in real life, right? Because we know biologically The prefrontal cortex develops later in a human's life, right? That doesn't come around until we're at like, I've heard varyingly 21, 25, 20, like whatever, like sometime in your mid 20s, but it's not a part of you that like the little kid brain has, right? Which makes it tricky if you're a kid and you're lead T, you're going to feel like you're not, it's like I'm responsible for doing this thing, but I suck at it because I just don't have the brain power to actually see what I'm responsible for. And it's a lot of turmoil. I didn't feel it as badly as Dave. Dave felt it really bad because he's doubling up on his NT, right? So it's like, I see all the machinations. I see where we're supposed to go. But like, I lack the resources and honestly, like just the brain power and the developmental component to actually be able to execute it, to do that, right? I had it a little easier because I have consumed third, so I have SF third. So as much as I sort of felt hamstrung in terms of like seeing all the angles or whatever, I was able to work with it a little bit better and be like, all right, I don't really know where this is going, but I can be in the moment and sort of, viscerally move from thing to thing and be like, this is feeling really good right now. Let me lean into this. And I did that all through college, but my whole approach was very, very much centered around, I started off coming to college with the intention of doing like playing and singing. And then that sort of morphed more into musical theater kind of. And then sophomore year, I was like, oh, the opera department. Yeah, let me hang out here. There's a lot of fertility here. Junior year was sort of opera and musical theater, right? So like at every stage, I was still within the realm of like what I was going towards, like my NI, my NT end goal. But I was still very like a little bit more flexible, a little bit more able to be grounded in that SF here and now, right? So if NT is all about risk versus reward, right? And if you are any sort of NT, or honestly, even if you just have NT above SF, your default impulse, the natural inclination, is going to be to just be playing out scenarios in your head all the time. There's a great Craig Ferguson special. And it's called Does This Need to Be Said? Very funny stand-up special, but it refers to a particular bit in that special that to me really encapsulates the difference between NT and SF. And you can see, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he's NT play first, and then SF sleep either last or very, very low. And the bit is sort of in three parts. He's like, because I've now been married 3 times, and each time I learned something new. And the first thing I learned was to ask myself, does this need to be said? In my second marriage, I learned, does this need to be said by me? And in my third marriage, I learned, does this need to be said by me right now? And I think that is very indicative of what NT wants to do and feels responsible to do all the time. It needs to see everything from every possible angle at the expense of what animalistically feels good. And I know that there's like the anecdote about like the popularity game, whatever. I know that the term animal is used in a number of different contexts in OP, but I really, really like to think of SF as like the animal. Like it is just like when you are in SF land, you are fully in your body. Whether, and again, in a number of different ways. Like I have a double masculine SF. So when I get really into my body, I get very like grounded and planted and like alpha male macho when I am in that state. And then when I'm in NT state, like you can hear it in the tone of my voice, how different my SF voice is. And again, it's not like, I'm not like trying to make my voice deeper because right, to be a macho man. Like, that just is what happens when I allow myself to actually settle into my body, to really relax. Like, for years and years and years, I sang high tenor in all of the choruses and all of the everything. And it's one of the reasons that Shave originally mistyped me. They went on record and corrected this in the official database. They originally typed me as double feminine. And part of that, I think, was just sloppiness on their part, because when they went back and reviewed the tape and I pushed back, they're like, oh yeah, no, based on the criteria that we use to measure, double feminine versus audio, masculine sensory versus feminine sensory, you have a ton of proof. Like, you track events on a timeline. Yeah, you're absolutely masculine sensory, good catch, right? But the biggest reason, and they talk about this in the Hassan class too, the biggest reason that they typed me as double feminine is that I was so all in on my feminine NI and feminine TE saviors that my whole energy was just really up, and it was very light, and it was sort of like, it was pointed and it was directed, and it was certainly blasting and wanting organization and tribe validation and all of those things. But it was totally from the, like, I was living from the neck up. There was nothing, it was purely like abstract theoretical land, right? Like, it was like in that sort of like nerd shit land. And it wasn't until very, very recently, in sort of my personal growth and sort of talking to them, that I actually started to settle into my physical body at all. And then once that happened, like, that opened up a number of things, and I had to work on some shit and leave New York City, and it was a whole fucking thing. But it really did come down to the fact that, like, oh, right, my energy is different when I'm in SF land. I can tell you an anecdote. I don't want to get too graphic because it's not germane to the story, but it is relevant to this NT-SF dichotomy. There was a time when this is probably 6 years ago-ish, where I was on the Tinder, and I happened to go visit a lady on a Tinder evening, right? We did the thing, super fun. But then, like, in the post-coital conversation, it was very, like, I felt my whole body just relax, and I was in it, and there was nothing happening from the neck up fucking at all. And my voice changed, and I felt calm, and it was like this beautiful, warm, open conversation with a woman who I've never seen again. But in that moment, it was just like, oh yeah, yes, boom. And sort of ever since then, I've tried to find ways to sort of recapture that. And that'll happen to me, like, whenever I get a massage, like a really good massage, I'll just, and it isn't purely out of relaxation, because obviously when you are fully relaxed and the vocal cords aren't as tense, then they're looser vibrations, right? Because that's how strings work. But, like, I'm like, no, my SF-ness lives in a very, very different realm from my NT. And I bring all of this up because, as somebody who is NT, it can feel really, really scary to dip into SF. What I said in the other video was that if you have saved your SF and are looking for a little more NT, in this day and age, I think that all you need is a soupçon of NT. You do not need a lot of NT to navigate the world, to get through life, to have the things that you want to have. And I would say that if I were Savior NT, I would say that if I were Demon NT, like that is not a reflection of my Savior or demonness. But I think that it's so easy now to, like, we have access to the sum of human information if we wanted, right? We can live in abstract theoretical land, sitting in front of a computer screen, on our phone, whatever, in ways that we just technologically couldn't back in 1960, let's say, right? If it were 1960, I would be like, y'all, you just need like a little bit of SF, but you got to crank up that NT because the world is not going to provide it for you, right? Like the world isn't set up to enable NT. So if you're Savior SF, fucking go as hard as you can into NT land because, you know, that'll balance it out. And now I think it's pretty the opposite, right? Now it's like, there's so much NT out there and there's so much information and so much, it's so easy to live disconnected from your body now in a way that you just couldn't, you know, how about, you know, even back, you know, I'm from New Mexico. I love cowboys, right? The cowboy mythology and all that aesthetic and that feel and that grit. Like what I loved about New Mexico and about growing up in New Mexico and why my parents love New Mexico. So this is, I'm going back on my typing of my parents. I'm still sticking with my mom as an ESFJ. But I think I typed my dad wrong. And it wasn't until there was the video on Shave's channel talking, about Clara, right? Like when Clara did her video on Shave's channel, plus the SINI video that, they put up on the class yesterday, that I was like, oh my God, I get it now. My dad is not an ENFP. He is an ESFP because he is not going to ever, like, he's not ever going to write down a step-by-step recipe. There's no part of him, like, he doesn't want to write down, he doesn't want to organize, period. But when he organizes, it's always going to sort of be kind of be in the moment, fly by the seat of your pants, figure it out. This is what I'm doing right now, right? As opposed to my mom, who would be like, okay, so here's what we need. We need 2 eggs, 3 sticks of butter, 4 things of sugar, 2 things of flour. Like there's a whole, right? That's her approach. And that is not my dad. But anyway, I bring that up because I think I am now pretty confident that they are both lead SF. She's got FESI. He's got SEFI. That is why they complement each other. Right? He's, I'm not sure about his modalities. I know he's got masculine sensory, like holy hell. I think he's double masculine and my mom's double feminine, if I had to guess. But anyway, I bring all of that up to say, growing up in New Mexico, it rewards the hell out of SF. And especially New Mexico in, you know, the 80s when my parents got together. Yeah, like super duper hardcore SF, which is why they, in their wisdom, were like, our children need an extraordinary education because it's real easy in New Mexico. They don't call it the land of entrapment for nothing, because it is such an easy place to live mechanically. Like you can find a job that pays $11 to $13 an hour, but like having, you know, if you have an apartment with a roommate, like that'll cost you like $600. Like things just aren't expensive in New Mexico. It's just not expensive to live in New Mexico and to live safely. Like I'm not talking about like living in the parts of New Mexico that are Breaking Bad level unsafe, which let me tell you, oh boy, is Breaking Bad super fucking accurate when it comes to New Mexico and Albuquerque in particular, where I grew up. Like, I know all those places. Like, I know dudes who got shot. Anyway, that's beside the point. My point is, when you have a lot of SF in a different day and age, you really needed to crank up the NT. But nowadays, because NT is so easy to access, and it's so easy to just sit on your phone and sit on your computer and watch YouTube videos all day and read news articles and just engage on social media and live from the neck up, you don't need much of it, and it really does behoove you to stay in your body. Which means for the NT types, you kind of can't go far enough into the SF realm. Kind of. I say that with a caveat, but like, if you overdo it on NT, I think that's gonna really bite you in the ass. Overdoing it on SF, again, overdoing anything is gonna bite you in the ass, really. But like, the number of people I have seen who are savior SF without a lot of NT tend to do better, from what I have seen at scale, than the people with a lot of NT but not much SF. Like that, the diminishing returns on NT, you hit those really, really fucking fast. Whereas the diminishing returns on SF don't seem to kick in as fast, right? And I think it's because we are all human animals, right? Like, at our core, the human is an animal. So we can all viscerally relate to our animalistic urges. What we choose to do about those urges, that's fucking whatever, right? Which is why you'll get people who, like, for me, I was like, NT, let me repress these SF urges because SF bad. I'm not responsible for that. Also, there was like a lot of toxic masculinity and pushback against toxic masculinity. And I knew that my SF animal just instinctively was this like intensely masculine presence. So like, you know, that was something I steered away from. Again, there are a million reasons and a million different ways to respond to your SF animal. Leaning into it, leaning away from it, fucking whatever. But like, that is something that we truly do all have in common and have had in common since birth, evolutionarily. Like, it's gonna hit us on that level, right? So the way to actually work on this is to basically do the opposite of what the SF is doing, or rather do what the SF is doing, but know that you're coming at it from a different angle, right? So the SF is going to start by going, you know, no concept of risk versus reward, right? So then you got to start building and be like, okay, but is this shit going to get me killed? Like, is this a calamitously bad idea? Yeah, I don't know. I think that maybe blowing up at my mom right now on Christmas Eve in front of grandma, yeah, maybe not the best idea. That could have like actually serious lasting ramifications, right? So like, maybe don't do that, right? But if it's not quite like that, then again, use your best judgment, do whatever you can, right? That's kind of what I want you to think about as an NT, is start by swinging really hard in the other direction and saying, okay, instead of playing this intensely nuanced, abstract, risk-reward, fucking cheaty trolley problem game 24/7, just start with, is this shit guaranteed to get my ass kicked? Is this going to have disastrous results? And if no, I'm going to recommend you consider doing it. With the caveat, again, like, don't hurt other people. Duh. obviously don't hurt other people, period. But when it comes to like your own decisions or things where it like, you know, other people are not going to be turbo negatively impacted by your choice, I think it is worth building that muscle of like, okay, this is not a great idea. I know it is not an obviously fantastic idea, but it's not going to get me killed. So I need to do it so that I can see where it actually falls on this spectrum. Because here's what ends up happening. What I have seen in my own life, and God, have I seen it in so many other arenas, is when NT gets on a roll, it stops caring about a binary coin of like good decision, bad decision. And it starts to be like, okay, we know this is a good decision, but like, could we have a better decision? Like, of these 4 good decisions, let's rank these decisions. Let's like, okay, well, this is a 62% chance success, and this is a 73% chance success. But what if we tweak this part of the 63%? Maybe that would make it an 85% chance of success, which would make the 63 with a modification better than the set. Holy shit. Oh my fucking God. Stop. I beg of you, stop. Because what ends up happening is you end up never being satisfied. And you end up in this position where you just, whether you get things done or not, right? Again, depending on what flavor of NT you have, blast, play, consume, sleep, whatever, that's going to manifest in different behaviors. But like, as far as your own, like, fuck OP for a second, just your own sense of self and existing in the world and how you feel about the things, right? And the people in your life, like the people, the things that people can talk about with knowing nothing about OP, like that shit, you're never going to be satisfied. You're just not. Because all NT wants to do is it wants to constantly, abstractly perfect, right? That's all it wants to do all day long. And there's certainly an element of that in SF, ST, and NF, for sure. But when we're talking about risk versus reward specifically, and we're talking about, let me make sure that I'm making the best possible decision. Let me make sure that I have the best abstract system, the best plan in theory. Here's the plan. We bulldoze through this. We avoid that. Okay, great. If this, then that. If this, then that. Like, again, it'll manifest in a million different ways. Everyone has their own nomenclature, but the NT component of it, I think, remains the same. Because it's going, okay, fuck. How can we make this plan how can we make this plan better? How can we make it more perfect? How can we, again, whatever it turns into, it's very easy to become dissatisfied without ever actually doing anything in reality. Because again, NT is always an abstract land, right? There was the video that, what's his name? That we talked about with the guy throwing salt at the guy, like lead anide guy, right? Disrespecting sensory. Yeah, all of that shit works in magical Christmas land, but there's no SF to it. Like there's nothing actually animalistically real about what he's saying. It's just a thought experiment. That's it. And when you're stuck in a risk-reward thought experiment, you're not actually collecting data. And you're certainly not collecting real-world data that like animalistically hits with a lot of people. I am still on the fence about Gary Vee. I'm on the fence. Where I'm at with him right now is like, our goals are just different. It's not that his advice is wrong. It just doesn't serve my personal goals. So I don't need to pass judgment on it because it just doesn't serve me. right? And I think that he says actually in a lot of his videos, like, this advice is only for people who are aiming for this thing. If you're not aiming for this thing, holy shit, please go away. I'm not talking to you. I'm like, cool, bye, right? So that's fine. But what I recognize in Gary Vee is his NT did not develop until, I would say, much later in life. And like, even now, his FE, SE, double masculine play is unambiguously driving the car like pretty hardcore, right? He now has a little bit of that NT to support all of the SF. And I think that that's kind of why he's doing really well, is because he knows that NT is important for him personally, right? It's important to have that aspect and be able to like make a couple calculated risks, take a couple of chances. But ultimately, if you can connect with people on an animalistic, visceral, SF level, now like that just trumps NT in a lot of contexts. Now, there are contexts when it doesn't. If you are in a very NT heavy cohort, SF is just not going to get the job done. It's just not. So like, and I think that that's why I see it a lot in various internet circles, especially the world of academia and just like the world of, smart people, college educated people, people with master's degrees, etc., getting caught in this NT circle jerk, is because any SF just gets stamped out really quickly. And now, now it's like, if you're going to SF, it has to be I don't know, it's weird. Like, because you can have these big outbursts, but they have to be so extreme in order to resonate with the NT crowd. Having sort of a measured SF response to something is not really highly valued in some cohorts. What Gary Vee is able to do is he can play his whole spectrum of SF. He understands how to have a large emotional reaction, animalistic reaction to something, or a tempered animalistic reaction to something, right? He can exist on this whole spectrum, and he can read the room, and he can go, okay, yeah, this is what this situation merits energetically from me, right? And he's done extraordinarily well for himself in service to his goals. And so, working on that SF muscle is just going to give you that flexibility, which brings you back to the actual advice, which is, look, don't hurt anybody, including yourself, right? That's like my blanket statement when it comes to SF. Don't be like, I want to be a piece of shit to this guy. Well, he won't die. He'll just be in the hospital. No, asshole. That's clearly not what I'm talking about. But I am talking about, like, you know what? I hate this coffee table. Like, I hate this coffee table. And rather than go, right, so like, incidentally, I love my coffee table. My coffee table is amazing. It's one of the lift top, the white. It's like this nice white. It goes with the rest of the furniture. It has a lift top and the storage underneath. Mwah, maron. It's fantastic. But let's say there was certainly a time, like when I was going through my stuff in New York, where I was like, I hate everything in my apartment. I hate these shelves. I hate these books. Marie Kondo, fucking get in here. We're nuking this shit. Was basically what I did. And a big reason it took me so long to do that was because I was stuck in NT land of like, okay, well, hang on a second. If I get rid of this coffee table, because I helped my dad build it, and it's like kind of special, it's a really nice piece of handmade wood, like, what will it actually cost emotionally to not keep this in my apartment? What if I ship it home, but then I don't have a coffee table? But if I'm leaving soon anyway, maybe it's better to just stay with the coffee table until I ship everything home, right? You don't have to do that. The world ain't that fragile. It's fine. But so that's an instance of, so not the coffee table, but like I had a bunch of clothes that were just like, I'd accumulated this shit for like 10 years. And even like the plates I had were from college, because I moved from college to New York and then lived in New York for 10 years. And so I kept so much stuff from like over a decade ago. And I was like, you know what? I'm done playing the risk reward game with everything. This shit's just got to go. Like, I just don't want it in my space. Like, I hate it. It SF makes me feel bad. No one's getting hurt if I throw this out because they're just dishes. Fuck it. They're going. All of these knickknacks and fucking tchotchkes cluttering up my... Gone. Putting it downstairs, donated, fuck it, don't care. 150 books that I never read, don't care about. They're going downstairs. They're getting donated. Fuck it all. Right? But it wasn't until, again, now for me that manifests, again, because of my double masculine SF, it manifested itself in a very like, right, approach. But the idea is I stopped playing the risk reward game and I just looked at it as catastrophic decision, not catastrophic decision. Great. If it's not a catastrophic decision, I'm just going to do it so that I can actually start building up my gradient of how good decisions actually are. I don't think I made any decisions that were actually worse than I thought. And most of the decisions I made were great and ended up being like things that I thought were bad decisions were actually just like an 85% good decision rather than a 92% good decision. The problem is that my barometer, I wasn't looking at 0 to 100. I was looking at 90 to 100. And anything outside of that range in terms of risk versus reward was just not, it all got lumped together, right? So anything less than a 90 is in the same category as catastrophic. And that's a very hard way to live. It's a very, very hard way to live. And so part of what you have to start doing is just say, okay, it's not, you're sort of saying that like you're adding the category of catastrophic, making that its own thing. So you have like catastrophic, question mark, not catastrophic for sure. And then there's the realm we like living in, which is in the like, surefire, this is carefully considered enough. There's a 93% chance or better that this will be fine and that I won't get my ass kicked on Twitter, right? But you're like, it's not in the bottom 10%. It's not in the top 7%. It's somewhere in the middle. Great. I'm just going to start doing shit. There might be a thing where you're like, oh, fuck, that was a 42. That was a solid F 42. Okay, great. Good to know. That is below where we want to be a lot of the time. But it ain't a 7, right? It's still a 42. It's not actually truly life-threateningly catastrophic. It just ain't great. Fine. That's a really important data point to have. And now you can go, okay, I know what 7 looks like. I know what 42 looks like. This decision, well, you know what? It seems better than 42. I don't know how much better than 42, but fuck it. We're doing it. Dink. Oh shit, that was an 85. Really thought that was going to be lower than that. Well, shit. If that's an 85, that's fine. Oh, wow. Okay. And now you really have a lot of color in your palette, and you can really start to make, ultimately, extraordinarily informed, smart, wise decisions where you're comfortable being like, you know what? All things considered, this 85% plan, yes, it is this does have a greater chance of success, but we don't have the time. It's going to feel too bad between now and when we actually get there. I'm going for the 60% right now. And I'm going to end on this. I got into a little bit of a disagreement with my Facebook friends because we were talking about the article that came out saying, like, if we had started social distancing in America 1 week earlier, we could have saved lives. And again, I had beef with it because I was like, I don't think it's a really helpful article. There's no way for us to change our behavior. My NT friends hammered on me. And we weren't mad at each other, but it was definitely like, we very much disagree about this. And the more I started to unpack it, it was that I was prioritizing the SF of, listen, y'all, there are a lot of different ways that people are living in America right now. Like, not everything is about New York City and Los Angeles. Like, Albuquerque, New Mexico is a city. Waterman, Illinois is a city. Seattle is a city. Cary, North Carolina is a city. The experiences, the SF, animalistic, in the moment experiences in each of these places are just fucking different for one another. And I kind of don't begrudge people weighing SF against NT. Look, if you make a clearly shitty decision, obviously go fuck yourself, right? If you like knowingly do something shitty. But I look at a lot of these governors and I look at the position that they're in, and it really is a balance of SF and NT and saying, look, we know what the data says. Our people are pissed off. So how are we going to thread this needle to actually, and again, it's not about keep our economy open. It's about, so like, for example, we opened up the beaches here in Los Angeles, right? You are now allowed to go to the beach again. And the way that I look at it is it's sort of like if your mom says to you, I don't want you going out and partying. However, if you want to smoke weed upstairs, that is fine. You are not to, once you start smoking weed, you are not to leave this house. Hard stop. That is the rule. You do not get to leave. But I know that if you do leave, because I know that if you do leave, you're going to smoke weed and then you might get behind the wheel of a car, or you might drink, or you might do drugs, or you might actually endanger yourself. So the risk is greater if I let you leave and forbid you for doing it than if I enable it with some serious restrictions so that you can still smoke weed with your friends, which, let me be clear, not thrilled with you smoking weed with your friends. Like, we're going to have a separate conversation about that tomorrow. But right now, tonight, my job as a parent is to keep you safe. So go upstairs, open the windows, hang out, party, chill, smoke some weed. Just do it safely. Know that we are here to support you. And I think that that's very much like these beaches. Because if they forbid people from going to the beaches, like, let's be like, fuck you, it's a beach. Literally, I can just walk onto the beach from my house. Like, you're not putting up a border patrol to the beach. So, like, go fuck yourself. I'm doing it anyway. And this, to me, is a way that Los Angeles was able to say, okay, I don't love that people are going to the beach, but we recognize that we actually can't stop you from doing this. So we're going to enable you to do it in a way that maximizes the reward and minimizes the risk, all things considered. and maybe we can have some sort of NT-SF compromise. And man, when you can do that, if that's your mindset going through the day, you are going to start to make a lot of progress on whatever it is you want to make progress on. All right, that's all I got for today. Thank you for hanging out with me. I love talking about SF. It just fucking feels good, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. SF is the shit. It's so good. And not just because it's like my demons and it feels good to work on your demons. I know, like, my Savior SF friends, like, they love it. If SF feels good to lean, like, it feels like how you're supposed to be. And I think that everybody, basically, regardless of type, but especially if you got a lot of NT in you, working on that SF is going to feel really good, man. All right. Have a wonderful Blurs day. What even are days? And I will talk to you guys later. Bye.